What is the most innocently funny thing a child has said to you? When my little sister was about 4, we went to a petting zoo. There were some llamas in the pen ahead of us, so I warned her that they spit and not to get too close. Well, she ran ahead of me, spit on the llama standing by the fence and then walked away saying, "Not if I spit on them first." Frick yeah, kid logic. In the midst of potty training my daughter, my wife took her into a public bathroom. Apparently the person in the neighboring stall was audibly taking a dump, which prompted my daughter to loudly say, "Good job pooping. I'm so proud of you." There have been many poops where I felt I deserved a cheering section at the end. When my sister was 5 or 6, she informed me she was going to get a girl rabbit and it was going to have lots of baby rabbits. I, the ever knowledgeable 10-year-old, told her kindly she need a boy rabbit as well for that. She just looked at me, offended, and said no, there's such thing as single parents. Done. I was in the Nutcracker as a big angel when I was 12. We were assigned little angels to be in charge of during the grand finale of the show, where everyone from Act 2 is on stage and waves Clara and the prince goodbye. Well, I suppose they didn't actually practice the kiss during rehearsal, but when the main characters kissed goodbye, sides of faces, my little angel broke character, turned around to me, and shouted in disgust, "They are kissing," while placing her hands over her shocked mouth. It was audible and visible from the audience. Cock-blicking has a new name, nutcracking. I was at Target in a random aisle and a 4-5-year-old girl was there alone. Her mom came down the aisle looking for her and told her they needed to leave. The girl turned towards her mom and straight-faced in the best Arnold voice a 5-year-old can make says, "Come with me if you want to live." I hadn't been watching but I just lost it. Her mom did too and said to her, "Is that from Terminator?" She said to me, "I have no idea where she learned that." I had to read this twice. I thought you meant Arnold from Hey Arnold at first. I find both equally hilarious. One time I was babysitting my BF's 6-year-old cousin and he said the word gay. I asked him what it meant and he said gay means female dog. My little brother thinks the word dong means potato for some reason. He went up to my mum the other day, looked her in the eye and said, "Mum, I want mashed dongs for dinner." My stepsisters were pretty dang sheltered, so one day when one sister was about 8, she saw that her grandparents' dog kept running around humping their other dogs. She kept asking, "What are they doing? What are they doing?" And then she imitated them. She pretended to wrap her arms around something, looking like she was hugging an invisible tree trunk, and began to hump. We told her to stop, through tears, but she saw we were laughing and kept doing it. And she's still too young to realize what she did. But when she's old enough, I will constantly remind her. They learn so young. I played Princess Tiana for a festival. I'm black obviously. We always tried to dance with the little girls. One girl tugged my dress so I leaned in to listen to what she had to say. She handed me a little sack of candy gold coins and said, "Here's some chocolate for you because it matches your skin." It was just so good. This reminds me of a story about the time my mom was a bridesmaid, wearing a fancy yellow dress. She asked me, age 5, if I liked her yellow dress and I said, "Yes, it even matches your teeth." My oldest child, for a while, could not pronounce the O sound correctly. She instead said the R sound in its place. Saw equals some, other equals author, fork equals. This being said, my wife and I went out to eat one night. The restaurant was basically empty and halfway through the meal it happened. It was almost in slow motion. Her little fork fell out of her hand and hit the floor. Frick 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 frick. As I reached for her to cover her mouth, she let out one more "I want food." I could hear the kitchen staff giggling for the rest of our meal. My cousin, when he was around 3-4, would say frick instead of frog. Needless to say, my whole family got a kick out of it. The other patrons at the Botanic Gardens were not as amused. Not me, but my partner, went on holiday to Florida. At the holiday resort it was common for people to walk around shirtless in the evenings due to the heat. On their arrival, his younger brother sees the people with their shirts off, points, and yells gleefully the word nipples. Pulls over and over until their mother clamped her hand over his mouth and dragged him to where they were staying as he continued trying to giggle shout nipples through her hand. The thought of this is giving me an immense amount of joy. NFPLES. MNM, NFPLES, LK at FANFPLES, MMPH. On my 5th birthday I ran into my parents' room excited that now I had a 5 head. Assuming that your forehead was named so after the age of the person, I was utterly disappointed that day. I cried on my 4th birthday because I thought you did all your growing and aging in one go on your birthday. I didn't realize that it was a gradual process. I remember being inconsolable for hours after I looked in the mirror and saw that I was exactly the same as the day before. I once told my kindergarten teacher about how big my dad's balls were. I was genuinely amazed. The story still circles around between the teachers at my old school, especially since my mother is a teacher there. I was giving a bath to a pair of young siblings. Boy is 3, girl is 5, with my girlfriend, who babysat them. Girl asks me if I want to see her make bubbles, and I agree to watch. Thinking she's going to fart, she leans back a little and I can see the bubbles are clearly not coming from her butt. Little boy asks me how to make wee wee bubbles. TLDR. Little boy asks how to do a male queef. Brief conversation last year with my son, who was 6 at the time. I need to preface this by saying we aren't a religious family at all. Me, hey, bud, we should start reading The Hobbit at bedtimes. Him, I'm already reading a book. Daddy, me, oh really? What book is that? Him, The Big N Bible. Me, what was that? Him, The Big N Bible. I think for a moment. Me, do you mean the beginner's Bible? Him, that's what I said. He meant the Ving Rhames Bible. My nephew was visiting, and he really wanted to see an episode of South Park. I told him no, because it contains strong language. His reply, oh, you mean poop? Looks like your nephew was a real badass. Once, my little brother told me about his dark past. He was 6 years old and after telling me nothing was the same, I was babysitting and we were chilling on my bed. So we talked about beds and how relaxing they are. He then says, when I was a baby, I had to sleep in a bed with a fence around it, like a prison. That was because then I couldn't steal stuff. I laughed my butt off and was close from suffocation. His imagination is so awesome. He was mostly right. Cribs are to keep babies from getting into stuff. Once I walked into the living room where my friend's 10-year-old was sitting. He says, hey Beameriscuits, I can't wait until I yanks his shirt up grow chest hair. One morning I heard my oldest son, then 3, freaking out in the bathroom. His mother rushes and then comes out quickly, obviously trying not to laugh, and says, this one is all yours. I step in to see my distraught son attempting to urinate with a severe case of morning wood. He looks at me with fear in his eyes and says, Daddy, I can't go. My pee-pee's frozen. Ah, the joys of parenthood. My little brother came out with some belters when he was younger. My 2 personal favorites. On a long drive, when he sees shafts of sunlight breaking through the clouds, look, heaven, then starts singing angelic chorus style. Walking along the seafront on holiday, this would be a perfect place for the French to attack. So I wasn't the only one mentally placing forts and cannon everywhere for fortification purposes. This is my daughter's first Halloween where she understands what is going on, and she is super excited. She is 3. I showed her the pattern I was going to use to make her costume, and she was thrilled. A fairy, for a girl currently obsessed with Tinkerbell. So, I am sitting at the table cutting out the pattern. She asks about it, and continues to watch some cartoons. Show is over. She comes to see what I am up to. I have set aside the pattern and I am grabbing all the scraps. I crumple them up and toss them in the trash. My daughter lets out this gasp. I look at her, and with a quivering lip she says, Mama, can we buy a new Halloween for me to wear? I was shocked. It was adorable, and I wasn't sure how to explain scraps to a 3-year-old. I ended up showing her the pattern pieces, and she was better, but for a moment there I had ruined Halloween. When my little brother was about 3-4, he was sitting on my lap. I was 21 at the time, and he just pulled out my shirt and looked down it. I told him not to do that, but he just stared at me wide-eyed and said, Crazy box lady, you got another button there? Whole family died laughing. Very sad. Rip Crazy box lady's family. My cousins came to a hockey game of mine once when we played against a uni in their town. After the game, I left the locker room to go say hi to them with my pad still on. Two of my cousins, around 3 and 5 at the time, took off one of my socks to reveal my shin pad. The 3-year was terrified at the sight of the shin pad and went and hid with her mum, thinking I was a transformer. The 5-year boy thought it was the coolest thing in the world and asked how he could be a transformer like me. I teach 1st grade. A couple weeks ago the kids all had their height and weight measured. One of the boys was absent on the day the kids were measured and the nurse called my room the next day during recess and asked me to send him up. He comes in from recess and I tell him that he needs to go to the nurse's office. He gets the most perplexed look on his face and asks, "Did I hurt myself or something?" Not really what a child said about me, but what I said as a child. I still get crap from my siblings for doing this. My older brother and sister thought it would be funny if they were able to convince me that I was adopted. They well full scale, as in sister asked her friend to call the house and talk to me acting like my real mother, and my brother writing this old butt looking letter from my real mom saying things like I work at a rice cake store, I'm too poor to support you, forgive me. The day before this heartless, cold, psychopathic, mental torture happened, I remember watching an episode of Taekwondo, this Korean cartoon show about a robot that can do taekwondo, telling me to call the police if anyone hurt me badly. I was hurt bad. So when I was bawling my eyes out, my brother and my sister said it was a joke. I told them, I'm going to call the cops cause you hurt my feelings. They started laughing their asses off. The twist is, I actually called the cops. I told them my brother and sister hurt me bad, crying my freaking eyes out. Korean cops banged on our doors in less than 15 minutes. Brother and sister got a good old butt whooping. I have to admit, if a kid said the same thing to me, I'd laugh too. But I wasn't any ordinary kid. They laughed. They got spanked. My siblings tried to convince me I was adopted. Everything they said made sense, sadly. So I went to my dad to ask him. He just said you aren't adopted. You couldn't be when I asked why not. He simply replied because that would mean that we had to choose you. Bastard. My 3-year-old daughter likes to tell random people about my beard. I'm a woman. I have no facial hair. It may be time to stop being naked around her. Edit. To the 14-year-old boys telling me to shave. First of all, people are supposed to have pubes. Being shaved is less sanitary. Secondly, I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't even see the lawn, let alone trim the grass. Edit 2. And now my second highest comment of all time is about my bush. I was working out a lot last summer and started shedding the pounds pretty fast. My son, 5 at the time, looked at me one day after I'd gotten myself dressed up in a nice outfit and said, "Boy, I think you look a little less fat." That was probably the most genuine compliment I'd ever gotten about my weight loss. It's such balls to hear, "Oh, you didn't have much to lose or you're not that big, don't worry. Nah, less fat." Now that's saying it straight. When I was little, maybe 2 or 3, my parents were talking and out of nowhere I came in yelling, "I know the F word. I know the F word." Well, my parents were a little taken aback, so they asked me what it was. I got this sneaky look on my face, looked around and then said, as quiet and sneaky as possible, "B." I used to teach Sunday school at my local church. After every lesson, I would make the kids do prayer requests, where they say something that they want to pray for and then as a group we all pray together. One day, a little boy named Jacob raised his hand. Me. Yes. Jacob. Jacob. Ms. I add a name 673. I wanna pray for my grandpa. Me. Alright. What do you want to pray for your grandpa? Jacob. Mommy and daddy were talking and they said that grandpa's penis doesn't work. Me. What? Jacob. His penis doesn't work. It's broken and he's really sad. I then had a group of 10 5-6-year-olds pray for an old man's broken dong. Wrote it up on the board and everything. I hope one day young children pray for me when I break my dong. Story from a friend. She was lying in bed. Husband comes in, naked, lays on bed, naked, with dong resting over the side. 5-year daughter comes in, looks at dong. Mom, there's Pooh in the bed. When I was a child, I was in England visiting family when my aunt asked me to go and tell my cousin that dinner was ready. He'd been hanging out with his girlfriend all day, so I was pretty happy about getting to have dinner with him and not just the boring grown-ups. I rushed upstairs and barged into his room without knocking. They were in bed. I slowly took in my surroundings. It smells like wet dog in here. My little sister and I were at Blockbuster, and a huge guy was in front of us was paying. The whole time I'm thinking, don't say anything, don't say anything. The man leaves and I'm just glad she didn't mention anything about his weight, because she is a very outspoken 6-year-old. He walks back in, because he forgot something. She freaking yells, oh great. Big boy's back. He heard and turned red. I felt so bad and made her apologize. She says crap like this all the time. 7-year-old me is on holiday in Japan with my family. The tour guide tells us how in Japan, don't know if this is accurate, if a couple divorces then the woman will get most or all of the money. I then apparently happily declared I want to marry a rich Japanese man and then divorce him so I can get all the money. Needless to say, everyone was shocked. TLDR, little me was hungry for the money. I'm guessing the tour guide was perhaps going through some family issues at the time. It's not what someone else said, but it was something I said. When you're younger, you're super impressionable. So one day at school, we had this assembly for drinking and driving. Being around 6-7, I thought it was horrible that people did it. So one day my dad was picking me up from my piano lesson and he had a travel cup of coffee in his hand. I didn't differentiate between alcohol and coffee, or any other drink for that matter. I just thought drinking anything was wrong while driving. I pretty much shouted at him no drinking and driving, and all he did was look at me with this confused, concerned face and then burst out laughing. Still haven't let me live it down after all these years. He tells this story to relatives at parties still. I totally did this when I was little too. I said it to my babysitter. She smiled good-naturedly and asked me why it was so bad, to which I replied, because the cup blocks your view of the road when you drink. Maybe it's okay with a straw. To this day, I still think it's pretty sound logic for a little kid. I had dreads, and where I worked I had to keep them tied back some. Being that they were messy, the ends stuck out at all angles. So I'm sweeping the lobby. Starbucks LOL. One of our regulars was there with her small child. Kiddo was always sweet. So today, she walks up, dead serious, tugs on my apron. Excuse me, did you know you have a squid in your hair? She had no idea it was my hair. Occasionally in the early AM, I won't flush after I pee, as to not wake or disturb my younger siblings while they sleep. Well, one morning my younger sister, 8, walks into the bathroom and sees pee in the toilet, runs out and says there's pee in the toilet and no toilet paper. I told her it was mine, and I didn't flush, so I didn't wake her up with a noisy flush. She then said, but you didn't wipe. I'm male BTW. I then had to explain to her that men don't have to wipe when they pee. She was dumbfounded. It was really cute, and it reminded me that there's still some innocence left in this world. It's not 100% necessary to wipe after peeing if you're male, but if you're going to be getting any attention down there from a lady friend or boyfriend, I'm open-minded. You should really wipe off that last drop or two off a yo-dong. When my daughter was about 3, our cat scratched her and she bled quite a bit. About 3 days later she's in the bathroom with me. I was using the restroom when my lady time came around. She saw the toilet paper and said, oh man, but scratched your coochie coo. Mama. I laughed so hard I cried. Upvote for Boots the cat. Me to my 4-year-old daughter, Anna. Why do you keep taking the clothes off of your dolls? Thinking to myself, it's downright indecent. Anna, lowering her voice, clutching closer the doll she's just undressed, and looking guilty. I just want to. I don't know why it cracked me up, but it did. I'm pretty sure all girls have to do this, and I have no idea why, even though I was guilty of doing the same thing. My friend's daughter was 3 at the time. She was learning how to put her shoes on and tie them on her own. She ran into where her mother and I were yelling, "Mommy look, mommy look." I put my shoes on all by myself, looking down to her mother, says, "That's great honey, but you have them on the wrong feet." Her daughter looks down puzzled, looks up at her mom and says, "But these are the only feet I have." My 4-year-old niece to me on observing a little boy peeing on a tree in the park. That's a handy little thing to bring on a picnic. My daughter wanted to hear a song by Skrillex, so when she and my son were at school I downloaded one. When I picked them up, I played it for them in the car. I have a slightly above decent sound system in it, and they love it when I give it a good crank now and again. And here comes the drop. My daughter is eating it with a spoon, just loving it, but my son goes, "What is this face all crinkled?" I say it's a guy called Skrillex, and it's called dubstep. It's music. Him, "Are you sure?" I have a Japanese uncle, and when me and my brother were kids our parents took us to a tourist attraction where a lot of Japanese tourists were milling about. My brother spotted them, and then yelled at the top of his voice, "Look mum, there's Uncle Hiroshi. Whoa, there's lots of Uncle Hiroshis." I've posted this before but it still gets me every time. This past summer I was visiting my family. On a hot day I decided to go for a swim. My sister was already in the pool. When I took off my shirt I heard her say, "Whoa, Dylan, you are really tan." I said, "Is that sarcasm, Ella?" She laughs and says sure is. She's only 8. My 7-year-old niece walk around saying random comments and then immediately after says, "I'm being sarcastic." Guys, I think she thinks sarcasm is synonymous with lying. When I was really young and my father was in the army, I thought every soldier was my dad because they all wore the same thing. When my mom and I would be waiting to pick my dad up after a deployment, every time a soldier would walk past I'd be like, "Daddy," I'd be disappointed when it wasn't him, but the next one that walked by I would think is my dad again. Then when my dad finally showed up I would lose my crap. Yay for happy childhood memories. My cousin, 6 at the time, didn't want to finish her dinner as usual. Her parents said, "You're staying here until you finish your dinner." Then in her most whiny voice said, "Why do you torture me like this?" We all cracked up. My little brother is a tad spoiled by my parents, so when they discipline him he gets extremely angry and screams, "I hate this family. Why can't I have nice things?" Makes me laugh every time. 4 years old son, "Dad, is my butt broken?" Me, "I don't think so. What made you ask that?" 4 years old son, "You said it had a crack in it." Moments earlier I was telling the wife how he had managed to get a piece of toilet paper stuck in his butt crack. The first joke ever told. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.